Hey, and welcome to the deep dive. We're digging into a really fascinating piece of writing today. It's a chapter from a book, and it kind of throws you off guard right from the beginning.
Oh, yeah. It opens with what sounds like, the simplest rule imaginable. Pet a cat when you encounter one on the street.
Right. And you think, okay, that's nice advice. A bit quirky, maybe.
Yeah, buckle up, because this source takes that simple idea and just goes somewhere completely unexpected, really deep.
Seriously, it spirals out pretty quickly. It gets into psychology, philosophy, the really deep reality of suffering, human fragility.
And resilience, too, surprisingly, and how somehow in the middle of all that chaos, you might find these little tiny moments of grace.
So our mission today is basically to unpack all the layers the authors built here. We want to pull out those key insights hidden under that simple rule.
And figure out the journey it takes you on. Like, why would something as small as petting a cat connect to these huge questions about, well, existence itself?
Exactly. So we've got the source material ready. Let's dive in and see what we can pull out for you. Let's unpack this thing.
Okay, so like we said, it starts with the cat rule, but then boom, immediate pivot. The first thing the author really describes in detail is actually his dog.
Right. A dog named Sicko. He says Sicko's an American Eskimo, a Spitz type. Calls him one of the most beautiful dogs he'd ever seen. Wolf face, upright ears, thick coat, curly tail.
Yeah.
The works.
And apparently, super smart. The source says he learned tricks incredibly fast. Even when he was 13 years old, the author taught him a new trick.
Oh, yeah. What was it?
Get this, shake a paw and balance a treat on his nose at the same time.
No way.
Yeah. Although the author does add a funny note that it wasn't totally clear Sicko actually liked the treat balancing part, maybe just tolerated it.
Poor dog. So the author got him for his daughter, Michaela, when she was about 10. Apparently, he was just unbearably cute as a puppy.
One of those animals whose features just, like, trigger that caretaking instinct in people.
Totally. And Michaela was already a big animal person.
Oh, yeah. The source paints this picture of her having this huge collection. Bearded dragons, geckos, ball pythons, chameleons, iguanas.
Wow.
And this massive, 20-pound Flemish giant rabbit named George. Apparently, George nibbled everything and was always escaping.
Sounds like quite the household zoo.
It does. And Sicko, crucially, was hypoallergenic. That was important because Michaela was allergic to a lot of other pets. He was one she could actually have close by.
Got it. And the nicknames, the source mentions Sicko had 50 nicknames.
50. He counted them. Yeah, some of the examples given are Scumdog, Refound, Furball.
Hungerball. Okay. Suck dog.
That's something. And Sneak, Squeako, Snooky Ugdog, Snorphilopagus.
Snorphilopogus.
And the current favorite apparently was Snorbs, often said in a specific high-pitched voice.
Okay, that definitely paints a picture. Oh, and the Instagram hashtag.
Yes. Hashtag judgmental sicko. Can't forget that.
So after all this about Sicko, the author finally explains why he started with the dog instead of the cat, even though the chapter title mentions cats.
Right. He says it's to avoid something called minimal group identification.
Okay, this is where the social psychology comes in. Henri Tajfel.
Exactly. The source describes these classic experiments. Tajfel showed people dots on a screen, asked them to estimate how many.
And then he just arbitrarily divided them.
Totally arbitrarily, like overestimators versus underestimators, or sometimes just based on a coin flip. And then he asked them to divide money between people in their own random group and people in the other random group.
And what happened? What did Tajfel find?
Well, the findings, as the source explains, are pretty revealing about us humans, even when the groups were completely meaningless. And people knew they were meaningless.
They still favored their own group.
Massively. They give way more money to their own group members. They'd often reject a fair, 50-50 split.
Wow. So it shows this, duality. We're social. We like our in-group.
But we can also be pretty antisocial towards out-groups, even really arbitrary ones.
And the author has a theory about why that might be.
Yeah, he speculates it could be an evolutionary thing, like a solution to an optimization problem. We need cooperation, right? For safety, security, companionship.
Sure, but we also need competition.
Yeah.
For personal growth, status, resources.
Exactly. And there's this group size issue. Too small, no power, too big. It's hard for any individual to climb the ladder,
So favoring your own group, even a silly one, helps your group maybe do better overall.
Right, which then theoretically gives you a better chance to rise within that thriving group. It seems incredibly deep-seated, this bias.
It really does, and the author kind of wraps up this whole dog detour nicely. He gives a little apology to the cat people.
Assures them cats are coming.
Yeah.
And they actually illustrate the main point even better.
And he throws in a line saying petting dogs is also approved behavior, so dog lovers aren't left out.
Okay, so we start with dogs. We get this detour into social psychology. But then the source really shifts gears. It goes from that observation into something much heavier, much more philosophical.
Yeah, that simple rule about petting a cat somehow leads us right into confronting the nature of suffering.
And the source doesn't pull any punches here. It just states it. Life is suffering.
It points to major religious doctrines, right? Buddhism, Christianity with the cross, Judaism commemorating trials.
Yeah, it emphasizes human fragility, how easily we get damaged, how we age, how we lose things in people. And this immediately brings up that huge question the source wrestles with.
Which is, given all this inescapable suffering and fragility, how can we possibly thrive or, even want to exist?
And to make this really hit home, the source shares this powerful story about a client.
Oh, right. The client whose husband was facing a terminal cancer diagnosis after fighting it for 5 years already.
Exactly. And the author points out how devastating news like that can be. Especially if you're already feeling fragile from previous bad news, it can almost destroy your trust and hope itself, become a real trauma.
And he connects this right back to his own life, dealing with the fragility of his own kids. He tells this story about his son Julian when he was just 3.
How vulnerable Julian was, getting sick easily, high fevers.
Yeah, terrifyingly high fevers, delirium, hallucinations even. The author describes having to cool him down in the shower. He says few things make it harder to accept human limitations than seeing your own child that sick, that vulnerable.
And then there's the story about his daughter, Michaela, starting really early on.
Right. When she was 2, he used to carry her on his shoulders, but she'd cry when he put her down, so he stopped. Later, his wife Tammy noticed something off about her walk, her gait.
And the source includes this really poignant memory. Michaela, at 14 months, just lying in the sun, babbling, happy, happy, happy.
Oh, man. That just makes what comes next even harder to read.
Totally. Because the source says things really changed when she was 6. She got mopey, slow, complained constantly about her feet hurting.
Even after they cried like 10 pairs of shoes.
Yeah, nothing helped. She'd hold it together at school, apparently, but just cry as soon as she got home. Her movement changed, walking upstairs one step at a time, like someone much older.
And there's that detail about holding hands hurting her. And later she remembered asking if playing this little piggy was supposed to hurt when she was tiny.
Ugh, that's just heartbreaking. So they sought help. A physiotherapist noticed her heel couldn't rotate right.
And suspected JRA, juvenile rheumatoid arthritis.
Yeah, or JIA, juvenile idiopathic arthritis, basically the same chronic autoimmune condition in kids. This physio told them to go straight to the hospital for sick children, ER, right away to see a rheumatologist.
And the diagnosis came fast. Severe polyarticular JIA.
Polyarticular, meaning it hit 5 or more joints. In her case, it was 37 joints affected. 37.
And the prognosis was just devastating. Multiple joint replacements, starting potentially very young.
And this is where that simple cat rule somehow leads to this incredibly profound, almost unbearable question. One, the source says, is fundamental for everyone, believer or not.
What kind of God or what kind of universe, what kind of basic reality would allow this to happen? Especially to a happy little kid.
The source brings in Dostoevsky here, the brothers Karamazov, the character Ivan.
Right, Ivan, who says he can't accept God's world precisely because of the suffering of innocent children.
Ivan tells this story from a newspaper about a little girl locked in a freezing outhouse all night as punishment.
And he asks his brother Alyosha that hypothetical question.
Yeah. If torturing that one child to death could somehow guarantee perfect peace and happiness for the entire rest of the world forever, would you do it? Would you agree to that price?
And Alyosha just quietly says, no.
And the source's point there is so powerful. Alyosha, the devout one, wouldn't do what God, by allowing such suffering, seems to permit. It's a real challenge to faith, or just to the idea of a benevolent reality.
This connects back to something the author realized earlier about his son, Julian. He'd thought about Julian's vulnerability.
And imagined, what if he could make him invincible? 20 feet tall, titanium body, computer brain, replaceable parts.
Right. But he realized that wouldn't be Julian anymore. It would be
Right.
Well, the source says a monster.
Yeah. The idea is that what made Julian lovable was inseparable from his limitations, his vulnerability to sickness, pain, anxiety. The author decided, for Julian, that he was okay just as he was, fragility and all.
But as the source points out, applying that same idea to Mikhailo was way, way harder.
Because the suffering was just so severe, so overwhelming. It wasn't just fragility, it was active, intense disease.
Exactly. So continuing Mikhaila's medical story, the author talks about having to piggyback her because she couldn't walk well. She started on meds, oral ones like naproxen and methotrexate.
Which is a chemotherapy drug, right? Used for autoimmune stuff, too.
Yeah. And she had lots of cortisol injections directly into her joints under general anesthetic. That gave some temporary relief, but she kept declining.
There's that really sad image mentioned, Tammy taking her to the zoo in a wheelchair, described simply as not a good day.
Yeah. Her rheumatologist then suggested prednisone, which is a powerful corticosteroid.
But the side effects were a major worry, weren't they? Especially the facial swelling for a little girl already going through so much.
Right. But then they found out about a new drug, a etanercept.
A biological drug,
Yeah.
specifically for autoimmune diseases. And at the time, it had only been used in adults.
Yeah, Mikhailo was the first child in Canada to get it.
And then there's that unbelievable detail
Mm.
about the dosage.
Oh, man, yeah. The source says Tammy, his wife, accidentally gave her 10 times the recommended dose the first time. 10 times.
Whoa, what happened?
The author just writes dramatically, poof, Mikhailo was fixed.
Seriously, just like that. An accidental overdose fixed her.
According to the source, yeah. It says just weeks after that awful zoo trip in the wheelchair, she was suddenly zipping around playing Little League soccer.
Whoa.
Tammy apparently spent that whole summer just watching her run, just watching this unbelievable turnaround.
That's incredible. And to help Michaela feel some control, they encouraged her to do her own injections.
Yeah, when she was 8.
Huh.
And the motivation was money.
Really?
Yep. Started at $50 an injection, then negotiated down to $20 if she cooperated within 10 minutes, then $10 for 5 minutes. The author calls it a bargain.
Whatever works, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So she went into remission then, for years.
Yeah, symptom-free for several years. The rheumatologist even suggested trying to wean her off the medication. Apparently, JIA sometimes just disappears around puberty, though nobody really knows why. So she switched to methotrexate pills instead of injections.
And things were good for about 4 years.
But then it came back. Her elbow started aching. Back to the hospital.
And the news wasn't great. The rheumatologist assistant told her something like, you only have one actively arthritic joint.
Which sounds dismissive, right? And the author's thought, as the source says, was immediate. 1 is infinitely more than 0 here.
Right. It meant the disease was back. She hadn't grown out of it after all.
Understandably, the news crushed Michaela for about a month. But she did rally, kept active.
But the decline didn't stop there. Grade 11, an MRI shows serious hip deterioration.
Initial prognosis: hip replacement before she turned 30. But just weeks later, playing ball hockey, her hip locked up really badly. Much more pain.
And the new prognosis was even worse.
Yeah. Part of her femur was actually dead. She needed a hip replacement now, not years down the line.
Wow. So the source brings this back to that earlier conversation with the client, right? Connecting Michaela's intense struggle with these bigger questions.
About life's fragility, about catastrophe, about potentially falling into nihilism because of it all. The author mentions sharing his earlier thought about Julian that vulnerability and being are somehow linked.
And he shared that old Jewish story, the one presented like a Zen koan.
Right. What does a being who knows everything, is everywhere, and can do anything? What does that being lack?
And the answer is limitation.
Yeah, the idea being if you're already perfect and complete, there's nowhere to go, nothing to strive for, nothing to become. It's static.
So God, or the universe, created limitation, created humanity, the world, for story, for the process of being and becoming, which requires limits.
Exactly. And the author says understanding this connection, this maybe necessity of limitation for existence itself, helped him and his client cope with the sheer fragility of it all.
The source then includes that quote, the one about the wheel in the pot.
Oh yeah, from Lao Tzu, right. About the hole in the hub making the wheel useful, the empty space in the pot making the pot useful.
The utility of non-existence. It's the limits, the boundaries, the empty spaces that define and give function to things.
It's a cool idea. And to make it even clearer, the source uses the Superman analogy.
Right, how he started out powerful, but, limited. Leap tall buildings faster than a speeding bullet. stuff like that.
But over the decades, writers just kept piling on powers. Flying faster than light, superhearing across galaxies, moving planets.
Shrugging off H-bombs, healing instantly, he became practically invulnerable.
And paradoxically, that made him kind of boring.
Yeah. Hard to write good stories for. If there's no struggle, no real threat, where's the drama? That's why kryptonite was introduced back in the 40s, right? To give him back some vulnerability.
The source links this to Deus ex machina, God from the machine.
That term from ancient Greek plays.
Yeah.
Where they'd literally lower a god onto the stage with a crane to fix everything at the end.
Yeah. And in modern storytelling, it means any kind of implausible, unearned rescue or solution that just comes out of nowhere. Feels like cheating.
Right. The source mentions examples like that X-Men character Lifeguard who just manifests whatever power is needed.
Or a god just showing up at the end of Stephen King's The Stand.
Yeah.
Or the infamous Dallas Dream season.
Yeah, exactly. Fans hate that stuff, and the source says they're right to. You suspend your disbelief based on the rules the story sets up. Breaking those rules feels cheap.
And Superman, with his near infinite powers, could basically Deus ex machina himself out of anything, which, the source argues, almost killed the character creatively in the 80s.
Until the reboot by John Byrne, who brought back reasonable limitations, no more lifting planets, he needed sunlight, made him interesting again.
So the takeaway the source is driving at is pretty clear. A hero who can do anything isn't really a hero.
Right. There's nothing specific to strive against. Being requires limitation. And becoming, like growth in story, requires limitation too.
It's a compelling argument for limitation being necessary. But the source doesn't shy away from the counterargument either.
Which is, isn't the suffering caused by these limitations sometimes just too much? So extreme that maybe the whole project of being isn't worth it?
Yeah. It references people like Dostoevsky in Notes from Underground, or Goethe's Mephistopheles in Faust. Characters who essentially reject the world, prefer emptiness, because it seems so unjust or random.
And the author admits, look, anyone can understand having those thoughts when faced with truly immense, unavoidable suffering. Losing everything, a terrible relationship ending, seeing someone you love just devastated by illness.
How can a reality that allows that possibly be justified? It's a question that hits hard.
This leads the source into some really dark territory, discussing the conclusion. It better not to be at all.
Right. He brings up the Columbine shooters as an example of people who seem to embrace that kind of nihilism. It's not just suicide, he suggests, but flirting with destroying everything. Maybe even genocide.
And the source calls this horrifying, because it feels understandable on some level. If you're a compassionate person witnessing the unbearable suffering of an innocent child, how could you not at least have the thought, maybe this whole setup is wrong, maybe non-existence is better? How could a good God allow this?
It's a really challenging point, but then the source highlights the terrible catch.
Which,
acting on those negative conclusions, deciding being is fundamentally flawed and should be rejected. It doesn't just make things worse, it makes things unbearably worse.
how so?
Because hating life due to its inherent pain isn't just a protest against suffering. The source argues it becomes a desire to produce suffering for its own sake. That's the essence of evil. People who genuinely think better not to be are, in this view, dangerously close to causing immense harm.
Wow. Okay. So the source then asks, is there even a coherent alternative? Can we even articulate a better way, given all the horrors, mosquitoes, child soldiers, cancer?
And the author says he's not sure a proper answer was even possible before we witnessed the sheer scale of totalitarian horror in the 20th century. The Holocaust, Stalin, Mao.
The idea being that without seeing the absolute endpoint of that nihilistic rejection of being, maybe you couldn't fully grasp why doubting the fundamental value of existence itself is so morally dangerous.
Something like that. And this leads to a crucial turning point in the source's argument. You can't find the answer to this abyss, this potential meaninglessness, just by thinking about it.
Thinking leads you into the darkness.
That's what the source suggests. It says thinking didn't work for Tolstoy, maybe not even for Nietzsche, when they wrestled with these questions. So, if thinking fails you in the deepest crises, what's left?
And the answer proposed is noticing.
Noticing. Okay, noticing what exactly?
The source suggests starting with something complex but maybe fundamental. When you truly love someone, it's often because of their limitations, not just in spite of them.
Okay. Unpack that a bit.
Well, it's nuanced. It doesn't mean you just accept every flaw or stop trying to make life better or ease suffering, obviously. But there are fundamental limits, maybe, that define our humanity. And if you try to remove those limits, you might destroy the very person you love.
Like the Julian example, making him invincible wouldn't be him anymore.
Exactly. But the source readily admits this is easy to say when things are going well. It's incredibly hard to hold on to that perspective when you're deep in the middle of something terrible.
And to really ground this idea of noticing and finding resilience even amidst awful pain, the source returns to Mikhaila's physical journey.
Right. Describing nights she just lie awake in agony. Her grandfather's Tylenol 3s, T3s, helped a bit.
But the main rheumatologist wouldn't prescribe enough opiates because of a past addiction case with another patient. Just suggested ibuprofen, which was useless.
Yeah, and the source notes that was a moment Mikhaila learned a hard lesson. Doctors don't always have the answers, or maybe aren't always willing or able to provide the help needed.
A new doctor eventually did prescribe T3s, described as brave given the climate around prescribing opiates to kids then. But even that wasn't enough.
So she ended up on OxyContin, which controlled the pain, but had those heavy side effects, slurred speech, nodding off.
Right, and then there's that really practical, almost startling tip from the author's sister-in-law, the palliative care nurse.
Adding Ritalin and amphetamine to the OxyContin.
Yeah, apparently it helped restore alertness and actually improved pain control. The source presents it as just a useful piece of knowledge for intractable suffering.
Wow. But her pain still got worse.
Excruciatingly so. She started falling more. There's that specific incident. Her hips seizing up in the subway station, escalator broken.
And her boyfriend had to carry her up the stairs.
Yeah, the subway, her main source of independence, was suddenly unreliable.
So that's when they made the decision about the scooter.
Right, that March, a 50cc motor scooter. The source is clear, they knew it was dangerous, but the alternative, her losing all freedom, seemed more dangerous to her spirit, maybe.
A really tough choice.
For sure. She got her learner's permit, had a few months before needing the full license.
And then the hip replacement surgery happened in May.
Yeah. Surgeon managed to adjust for the leg length difference, too. And good news, the bone hadn't actually died, it was just a shadow on the x-ray. So she had some better days post-surgery.
But the rehab experience? That sounded nightmarish.
Oh, absolutely appalling, the way the source describes it. Straight after major surgery, put in an adult center, youngest person there by like 60 years.
Neurotic roommate, lights always on, bedpan use, door open to a noisy nurse's station. Impossible to sleep. No visitors after 7 p.m.
And the physiotherapist was on vacation.
Unbelievable. The only person who helped was the janitor. Moved her to a different ward.
Yeah. And the source adds this detail that the nurse on duty had actually laughed when she heard which room Mikhaila was assigned. Just awful.
But Mikhaila showed incredible resilience again.
Totally. Supposed to be there 6 weeks, checked herself out after 3 days. When the physio finally got back, she mastered the exercises super quickly. Her family set up handrails at home and took her back.
The source notes she handled the surgery and the pain itself, but that rehab experience gave her actual post-traumatic stress symptoms.
Yeah, understandable. But her courage didn't quit. That June, she went for the full motorcycle course for her permanent license.
It's terrified her family, right?
Right. Completely. Day one, heavy bike. She dropped it multiple times, saw someone else fall.
And the next morning, she was scared to even get out of bed.
Genuinely afraid. They talked it through, decided she'd at least drive back to the course with her mom, maybe just wait in the car.
But her courage came back on the drive there.
Yeah,
Right.
She went through with it, completed the course. And when she got her certificate, the source says everyone there applauded her.
That's amazing. But just when things seemed maybe a bit more stable, another crisis.
Her right ankle just disintegrated. Doctors wanted to fuse the bones.
But that wasn't a good option for her, right? Damaging other bones, not really viable for a teen with her condition.
Exactly. They insisted on trying for an artificial replacement, which was still pretty new technology then. Problem was a 3-year waiting list.
3 years
Yeah.
with that kind of pain. The source says the ankle pain was even worse than the hip pain had been.
Way worse. There's a description of one night where she was just breaking down from the pain, erratic, illogical. The author knew she was at her limit, an incredibly stressful time.
So they started looking everywhere for surgery options.
All over the world, India, China, Spain, UK, Costa Rica, Florida, weeks and months of searching. Eventually, the Ontario Ministry of Health helped find a specialist in Vancouver who could do it sooner.
So the ankle replacement happened that November, but the recovery was brutal too.
Intense agony post-surgery. Her foot was apparently mispositioned in the cast, compressing skin against bone. And the clinic wouldn't give her enough OxyContin for the pain because she had built up such a high tolerance.
Rough. But when she got home, the pain lessened and she started tapering off the opiates.
Yeah, the source says she hated OxyContin, felt it turn her life gray. She stopped as soon as she could, even though it meant months of withdrawal symptoms.
Night sweats, that horrible crawling ants feeling.
Formication, yeah. And anhedonia, the inability to feel pleasure, just awful.
So the source uses all this relentless series of crises to ask, how do you even manage? Because everyday life doesn't just stop, does it?
Not at all. The demands keep coming. And this is where the source shares some really practical, hard-won lessons about managing catastrophe.
Okay, what were they?
First, you have to schedule dedicated time each day for the crisis. Talking about it, thinking about it, planning for it. But, and this is key, you have to strictly limit that time.
Why limit it?
To stop it from consuming everything. To prevent total exhaustion and spiraling, you need to conserve strength. The source says think of it as a war, not just a single battle.
And the brain is sort of satisfied just knowing there is a plan, a time set aside, even if the plan isn't perfect.
Apparently so. It calms the anxiety somewhat, and crucially, don't schedule that crisis thinking time for night, or you'll never sleep and everything gets worse.
Makes sense. What was the second lesson?
Shift your time frame. When things are good, you can plan months, years ahead. But when, as the author vividly puts it, your leg is in a crocodile's jaws.
You focus just on the day.
Exactly. The source quotes the Bible here, Matthew 6.34. Sufficient unto the day are the evils thereof.
And the interpretation isn't about being careless, right?
No, not at all. It's framed as an act of courage. You have faith in something bigger, God's kingdom, or just truth, or the fundamental goodness of being, despite evidence to the contrary. You aim high, like Geppetto wishing on the star. Align yourself with the highest good you can conceive.
And then you bring your focus down to just managing the current day right in front of you.
Precisely. Be careful, be precise with what you can control, order your immediate surroundings, repair what's broken, make good things slightly better. The point is, management is possible, even in chaos, if you're careful.
People are tougher than they think.
That's what the source says. We can survive incredible pain and loss, but the absolute requirement, the thing you can't lose,
Is seeing the good in being.
yes. If you lose that fundamental belief that life itself is still worthwhile despite the suffering, then, the source concludes, you are truly lost.
And this finally brings us back explicitly to the cats and the dogs.
Yes. After that whole intense journey, we're back to the animals. The source contrasts them again. Dogs are like people, friends, allies, social, hierarchical, domesticated.
They seem happy being part of the family structure, paying for attention with loyalty and love. Dogs are great, the source says. No argument there.
But cats. Cats are different. They're their own creatures, not really social or hierarchical in the same way, only semi-domesticated.
They don't do tricks for you. They're friendly, but totally on their own terms. And the source has this fascinating take.
That dogs were tamed, but cats sort of decided to interact with us for their own mysterious cat reasons.
Exactly. It presents cats as a manifestation of nature, of being itself, in a purer, less human-modified form than dogs.
And crucially, a form of being that looks at us humans and sometimes seems to approve.
The source then describes that specific experience, meeting a random cat on the street. The author admits this fleeting, evil part, urge to maybe startle it.
Huh. Yeah. But then the conscious choice. Bend down, call softly, offer to pet it. The cat might run, might ignore you.
But if it comes over, pushes its head against your hand, seems pleased, maybe even does that rollover thing.
Which might come with a playful bite or scratch.
Right, the authentic cat interaction. The source gives the example of Ginger, the Siamese across the street. Beautiful, calm, low neuroticism.
And friends with Sicko the dog. Trots across the street, rolls over for the dog. Might give the author 30 seconds of attention if she's in the mood.
And the significance of this tiny, seemingly trivial moment.
The source says it's just a nice break, a little bit of extra light on a good day, and, importantly, a tiny, tiny moment of respite on a bad day.
It connects this to other small, positive things you might notice, even when life feels awful, if you're paying attention.
Like seeing a little kid dancing spontaneously in a ballet costume, or getting a really good cup of coffee from someone who cares.
Or even just stealing 10 or 20 minutes for a completely ridiculous distraction. The author mentions watching The Simpsons at 1.5x speed.
And this gets us to the core point, the destination of that simple rule we started with. When your head is spinning, when life's difficulties are overwhelming, maybe a cat shows up.
And if you can manage, just for a moment, to pay attention to that small interaction, that little connection.
It can serve as a reminder, maybe just for 15 seconds, but a reminder that the sheer wonder of being the potential for unexpected connections, spontaneous grace, just might, be enough to counterbalance the suffering that's also undeniably part of it.
Pet a cat when you encounter one on the street. That's where the whole journey leads back to.
But wait, there's a postscript? A PS added shortly after the chapter was written, and it starts with some pretty grim news.
Oh, right. Michaela's surgeon had just told her that her artificial ankle, the one she fought so hard to get, might need to be fused after all.
Which could mean amputation down the road. She'd been in pain for 8 years since the replacement, mobility still impaired. Just devastating news again.
But then, just 4 days later, something utterly unexpected happened.
Totally out of the blue. She saw a new physiotherapist, described as large, powerful, attentive, and ankle specialist from the UK.
And this new physio did something simple.
Incredibly simple. He just compressed her ankle joint for about 40 seconds while she moved her foot around.
Yeah.
And a bone, one that had apparently been mispositioned for years since the surgery, just slipped back into place.
No way.
Yeah, her pain, the constant pain she lived with for 8 years, it just disappeared instantly.
Wow. Wow.
The source says she almost never cries in front of medical people, but she just burst into tears. Her knee straightened out immediately. She could suddenly walk long distances, walk barefoot again.
Her calf muscle started growing back. More flexion in the joint.
All of it. Just an unbelievable, almost miraculous turn of events.
And the PSNs with some happy updates, too.
Yeah. That year, she got married, and she had a baby girl, Elizabeth, named after the author's wife's mother.
After everything.
Yeah.
That's just wonderful.
And the author's final sentence in that postscript is just perfect, given everything. He simply says, "Things are good. For now."
For now, yeah. That captures it, doesn't it?
Fosborough. Wow, what an absolute odyssey this source takes us on. Starting with petting a cat, detouring through dogs and psychology, plunging into suffering, limitation, catastrophe.
And then arriving at noticing resilience and sin. Yeah, that almost unbelievable moment of grace at the end. It's quite something.
It really forces you to grapple with that idea that limitation isn't just a bug, it might be a feature, woven into the very fabric of being.
And that suffering isn't an interruption to life, it's just part of the deal, an inherent part of being human.
And that simple rule about the cat, or noticing the dancing kid, or savoring the coffee, it really becomes a symbol, doesn't it, for the power of actively noticing.
Yeah, allowing those small moments of connection or beauty or just simple presence to break through the noise and the pain, even for a second.
They don't make the suffering go away. The source is clear about that.
Absolutely not. But they offer that vital counterpoint, that reminder that wonder can exist right alongside the hardship, that both are real.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into this really rich source material, maybe here's a thought to leave you with, building on this theme of noticing and the balance between suffering and grace.
Oh, yeah.
In your own life right now, with whatever challenges or difficulties you're facing, big or small, what's one simple, maybe easily overlooked moment or connection or sensation that might offer you just a tiny respite? A small reminder that there's still wonder to be found, even now. What are you going to notice today?
That's a good question to sit with. Thank you for joining us for this exploration.